pastor's messages. And it's Pastor Feezer, and if you didn't know, it's Feezer. Because every time she made a note in there for Pastor Feezer, it was with a Z, and I tell him that, and he goes, she knew it was with an S, and I said, I can't say anything, it was with a Z in all her notes, but I started reading her notebooks, and she would make notes in there about pastor's messages, and then when I got to the ones about Sunday school, and notes for me, I was just like, I would sit in my office, and I'd be bawling my eyes out. But the prayer warrior and the person that prayed for you and all those things that you don't realize and realize how much that meant to you. And then guess what? They're celebrating Mother's Day in heaven. So I can't be mad because, she's in a much, much better place than we are right now. But thank goodness for godly mothers, that it just transfers on and on to godly children. And even if they're not, like Gail said, even if they're not living for the Lord, they know what they should be doing because their mother instilled that in them. So if they're veering on all these other paths in life and the world's got them right now, it doesn't matter because that mom influence is still there, even though they might not be here. And if they are here, they're getting it direct. But if they're not, then they're getting it indirectly because you can remember what your mom told you. I remember one of her things that she would tell me, and of course you could probably all relate, that she would always tell me, quit being so simple. And she would just tell me that constantly, quit being so simple. She even told me that in the hospital when she had the stroke. Before she died, I said something to her, and she goes, quit being so simple. I said, okay, Mom. But those are the things of a godly mother. You just can't explain that to anyone. The opposite side of that is the mothers that aren't godly. And that has nothing to do with my Sunday school lesson, but if you think about the mothers that aren't godly, what they're teaching their kids, they may be teaching them good things and good morals and how to be a good person, but they'll never be in heaven if they have a good mom. They will be in heaven, or they'll have an opportunity to be in heaven if they have a godly mom. So just wanted to share that, and thank you so much for the testimonies about your mother. So wanted to go to the, not pastors, I was afraid we were going to have the same one, because Pastor and I never talk about Sunday school and what he's going to talk about in church. And this morning I'm thinking, oh my, if he goes to Proverbs 31, I'm going to be in trouble. And when he said Timothy, I was like, whew, because we never do talk about it. But one of these days it'll happen, and that's fine because the Bible never gets old. I say it all the time that these pastors that have preached for any length of time, they just have the messages that come out of the Bible. And even if it's the same passage, is it a different message? It is, because the Holy Spirit's going to tell you things and work on your heart in different ways. But in Proverbs 31, there's a lot of things in here that are talked about King Lemuel and his prophecy that his mother taught him. And it's practical things. It's things of the Lord. It's things that we need to pay attention to. And when we're talking about godly mothers and what they need to be, this passage right here just covers a lot of information. And this is what his mother was telling him. And when it says in verse 2, what my son, what the son of my womb, and what the son of my vows, that's saying, hey, just pay attention. When you're repeating it 3 times, that is like, pay attention. This is important. This is important information coming up, and you need to be paying attention to what I'm going to say. And in verse 3, what is the first thing that Mom thought was important for King Lemuel? Give not thy strength unto women. Why would she say that? Why would that be the first thing that comes out of her mouth? The first thing that the Bible says about give not thy strength unto women. And I'm not going to offend any women here, but, can you influence your husbands to do something maybe that he don't want to do? Pastor's not looking directly. It's never happened, has it? Because, yes, it will happen. Give not thy strength unto women. Women will influence you, and in a good way a lot of times. But are there women that are going to influence you in a bad way? Or to make wrong decisions or things like that? Absolutely. If you don't think so, then you're being naive. Because there are women that will steer you in the wrong direction. And the mother is saying, give not thy strength unto women. That's a cautionary, all through the book of Proverbs, there are cautionary things about that. King Solomon knew that more than anyone. But it took him losing everything. And, that's what happened. But give not thy strength unto women, nor thy ways to that which destroyeth kings, is the second cautionary thing that she put in there. The ways that would destroy kings are what? Kings have all the authority in the world. I mean, back then, the kings, if the king said something or wanted something, that's what happened. And what would happen if the ways which destroyeth kings? Kings are anointed of God. Kings are put in place. God allows them to be in place. Look at what happened with King Nebuchadnezzar. God allows them to be in authority. And if you're not going to do things that are right, and if you're not going to do things, God's going to take you out of that position. She said, don't go to the ways that destroyeth kings. Verse 4, it's not for kings, O Lemuel, it is not for kings to drink wine, nor for princes strong drink, lest they drink and forget the law, and pervert the judgment of any of the afflicted. Give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. Let him drink and forget his poverty, and remember his misery no more. That is verses 4, 5, 6, and 7, talking about Proverbs 20, verse 1. We went over that a couple Wednesday nights ago. Wine is a mocker, and strong drink is raging. Whoever is deceived thereby is not wise. Pastor had just a good message on that Wednesday night, talking about when people talk about this stuff about, drinking wine and strong drink, and, it's okay and it's not okay, and the Bible talks about it and the Bible condones it, and, people just get on all different rabbit trails. But the fact is, she's warning her son here, you're not to drink strong drink. You're not to drink wine. Because what happens with that? You can become a mocker. You can become deceived. You're going to think about things that you shouldn't. You're going to do things that you shouldn't. You're not going to make the right decisions that you would have to make. Person in authority, like a king, when do they have to make decisions? All the time. Could be in the middle of the night. What if the king had drank too much, and then all of a sudden he's getting attacked at night? Is he going to make the right decisions with his armies? No. What if something came to his thing that said, hey, the people are upset, there's this disease and pestilence coming through the land, what are you going to do, king? And you're in a drunken stupor. You're not going to make the right decisions. The Bible all the time talks about this and just gives warnings. And for King Lemuel, the mother talking to him and telling him, 4 verses here, you should not be doing this. Some folks will take verse 7, because when I was reading this, today, and even a commentary this morning, let him drink and forget his poverty and remember his misery no more. And verse 6, give strong drink unto him that is ready to perish, and wine unto those that be of heavy hearts. People say, if you're depressed or something, the Bible says to, drink wine because you have a heavy heart. It's not what that means. That means you have a twisted soul. That means you have a soul that is not godly. That heavy hearts does not mean that you're sad and you're depressed, and that's why you should drink wine, and that's not an excuse for you to drink wine. It's talking about somebody that's not doing the right things. What's the alternative if you have a heavy soul, or a soul that you're depressed or you're sad? What's the alternative to drinking the wine that the world would go to? Pray. Pray. Talk to somebody. Talk to somebody that's, godly, that's in the church. Talk to somebody that's godly outside of the church. Talk to somebody that's godly. Pray about it. Partner up with a fellow Christian and say, hey, this is what's going on. Can you pray with me? There's things that you can do that do not involve, just going straight to alcohol, to wine or strong drink. Verse 8, open thy mouth for the dumb and the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction. Why does she say that as a thing for the king to do, or for us to do from a mom? What about people that can't speak for themselves? Do you know anybody that has something going on that they just can't? They don't know where to go. They don't know where to turn. They don't know who to talk to. They don't know who to get instruction from. If you have all that knowledge, help them out. Give them some of your knowledge. As we have more birthdays, we get more experience behind us. If somebody's struggling with something and you know how to help them, try. Now, if they don't take your instruction, what can you do about that? Nothing. A lot of people aren't going to take your instruction. They're going to have to learn on their own. Does anybody have kids that have done that? You try to explain things to them that, well, my dad and mom told me this, and I was a little hard-headed. I know that's hard to believe sometimes, but a little hard-headed, and then I had to experience some things for myself. And guess what? Mom and Chad try to give you that shortcut. They try to give you that, hey, just work around that, because I can tell you what's going to happen. And it's funny because now the more birthdays I have, the more that I realize that they were right all along. And all those switches that I got from Granny when I was not doing the things that I was told to do, it wasn't a lot. But the funnest part about getting switches from Granny is when my brothers got in trouble, I got to go get their switches. And so I would climb to the top of the apple tree and get that nice long, apple stick. And, so my brothers, they would get the ones that hang low. And a lot of times on the apple tree, the ones that hangs low would break. So I didn't mind getting the switches, where my brothers, Granny just switched me terrible. And I was like, yeah, because I went up and got your switch for Granny. But I hope they're not listening, because now I'll get some phone calls after church. But, the thing is that, when you learn from the correction is good. But when you don't learn and then you have to find out, it's like, just keep going. Learn from it. Learn what somebody is telling you that knows a little bit more than you. In verse 9, open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy. When you do open your mouth and you do have to judge someone, do you have to be a king to judge somebody? No. It happens all the time. What's your opinion? What do you think? You need to get all the information. It's the only thing I can tell you. Get all the information. And then when she says judge righteously and plead the cause of the poor and needy, a lot of times the poor and needy, they don't have anybody to go to. So when they're talking to you, stop and listen. Take the few minutes that it takes to listen to some things that they're talking to you about. Because with your spiritual discernment as Christians, and I look around and I would say probably 100% of the people that are in here are Christians and on their way to heaven. They're talking to you because they know you're a Christian. You have some godly wisdom that they're looking for. So judge righteously, and when you plead the cause of the poor and needy, find out what's happening. When you look at verses 10 through the rest of the chapter, it's talking about who, as far as a wife for the king, the mom goes into all of these descriptions of what she wants her son to be looking for. Not only what she wants her son to be looking for, but also what he should be looking for. And when we look at these descriptions, it just jumps out at you, starting in verse 10, who can find a virtuous woman, for her price is far above rubies? How valuable is a virtuous woman? And when we look at the definitions of a virtuous woman, what is that? High moral standards, righteousness, goodness, conforming to ethical principles, morally excellent, acting with integrity. Does that sound like folks that we know? Does that sound like the definitions of our moms that we had testimony about? Yes, for the most part, 100%. What if you have opposite of that? What if you have opposite of that? You have somebody that is worldly attractive and wears very little clothing and lots of makeup, and not that there's anything wrong with makeup. I will give you the Pastor Brown's definition. What's that? If the barn needs painting, paint it. And he stole it from somebody else. So when I asked him about that, he said, I got that from a preacher a long time ago, and he came from Texas, so we're going to say it came from Texas somewhere. But when you hear that, I always tell my wife that, and she laughs just like used to. But if you think about that, and you think about the world's vision of a lady or a girl or a woman or something like that, it is nothing like the godly terms of a person that you're looking for a wife. It's just a whole different set of circumstances. The world's never going to have anybody, and that goes into then they have children, and what happens to their children? If they're not godly, then it goes along the same route. And then when we get to the point that we are now, how many of these folks are encouraging their children to go to church, to dress right, to act right, to do the right things? Very few. They want them to be good people, but they're not giving them the right roadmap. All these things it talks about a virtuous woman just isn't in their vocabulary. All the things that we think about when we think about godly mothers, It's not there. Because you want to go to church? It's up to you. We're not going to have you go to church or Sunday school or learn about God or learn about Jesus. It's up to you if you want to do that. And then what happens? Then the devil gets a hold of them, and there they go. And then it's tough. But that's why she says her price is far above rubies. The earthly good that can come of it, the earthly wealth, it's not going to matter. In verse 11, the heart of her husband doth safely trust in her, so that he shall have no need of spoil. When you do get married to that virtuous woman, that her price is far above rubies, do you have much to worry about? No, you don't. You marry that godly woman that the Lord has sent you. You're going to sleep comfortably. You don't have to worry about, what does the world worry about? My wife's going to leave me and take half of everything that I have. Okay. Because she's going to be running around, or she just wants to leave me, and, she's not happy with me anymore. Well, if you have a godly wife, and you have someone that's virtuous, then you're not going to have to worry about that. Verse 12 is self-explanatory. She will do him good and not evil all the days of her life. Because we know that, with the husband and wife, and you find a virtuous wife, everything is roses every day. No arguments, no disagreements. Right, Brenda? Everything is just as calm as it can be all the time. And, it'll be, you're doing good, not evil. If you're doing good, that doesn't mean you're going to be a yes person, or you're going to say, yeah, whatever you want and everything like that. It's just you're going to have the right intentions in mind. You're going to be doing, what you should be doing every day of your life. She seeketh wool and flax in verse 13, and worketh willingly with her hands. She shy away from work. Does that godly, virtuous woman shy away from work? No. She's seeking wool and flax because that's how we're making our clothes back then. We're not going and, getting it from somebody else or anything. She's seeking it. She's getting it. She's working willingly with her hands. In verse 14, she is like the merchant ships. She bringeth her food from afar. I thought this was kind of interesting because what's the significance of that she brings her food from afar? What does that matter? What does it matter if you get your food close or you go get it far away? What's that? Spice of life. I kind of wrote down something like that, Gail. Also, she knows what her husband likes also. So she's getting something that, goes a little bit farther up above and beyond. How many of you would go over here to Rutter's to get your dinner plans and maybe Sobbles? And then what's the other option besides Sobbles? How about the markets, the fresh produce stands and things like that? A lady that's going to be looking of what I want to get, she's going to be going to the fresh markets. She's going to be, not to where the people have it right there in the store close and it's been there for 2 or 3 or 4 days. She's going to know where the good stuff is. She's going to know where the things are that, her husband likes or her family likes or her household likes, and that's where she's going to go. And she's going to make the best decisions, because if I go over here to Rutter's and I get a thing of water or soda or beverage or anything, and I go to Sobbles, where's the best place price-wise to get it? Sobbles. This is a convenience store, and that's why it's a convenience store. It's convenient, but you're going to pay for that convenience. So we need to make sure that we understand that this is talking about, she's doing the right things for the household here. Verse 15, she riseth also while it is yet night, and giveth meat to her household, and a portion to her maidens. When do we do, like, even nowadays, when do we do like the meal prep things, or get things ahead for what we're going to eat, or planning out meals for the week? And I know my youngest son and his wife, they do it crazy. I mean, they got meal prepped and in little containers and marinating and things for the whole week. And my other daughter-in-law, they have a little dry erase board. All their things are right up there. I said, me and Dana, wing it. What are we doing for dinner? I don't know. It don't matter. Whatever you want. A couple nights last week, I said, I'll just take a peanut butter and jelly on a little wrap, and I rolled it up and ate it, and that was my dinner, and that's what I wanted. And she was like, okay, I'll get something out of the refrigerator. But yeah, some people, they'll plan their whole entire weeks out. Back in biblical days, they had to get up at night and prep things and grind corn and all those things just to get the meals to be ready to be made the next day. I mean, I can remember some of this stuff happening when I was a little kid, especially when we'd go down to like family in West Virginia, and all of a sudden, they'd be getting stuff out of the cupboard and the flour and the cornmeal and all that stuff and whipping things up. And it wasn't just opening a package. It was preparing meals. How many of you like to cook like that, like scratch ingredients and all that stuff? And I mean, it's amazing when you put ingredients together. It's what it does and how the food tastes, and it tastes so much better than if you just buy it at the store and put it in the oven. It's just a whole different flavoring. But she had no problem with that. When she giveth her a meat to her household and a portion to her maidens, she's also worried about the people that are in her house. You all remember when we used to set an extra plate at the table in case somebody would show up? We did it all the time. And guess what? A lot of times we need two. Because when Granny was living with us, and then there was 7 of us, and then somebody else, and then somebody else, a lot of times there'd be 10 or 12 people eating at our house. And they would just stop by. They didn't make appointments, because with family you don't make appointments. You show up. And guess what? It's not an occasion. It's just I was in the neighborhood. Hey, just in the neighborhood, I'm stopping by. And it would be somebody that, some of my uncles, they'd be truck drivers. We would know when they were coming. Because back then we didn't have cell phones. We couldn't locate people. They would just show up. And guess what? When they showed up, Granny always had an extra plate there on the table. And her and Mom would just be, oh, we got plenty. And even if we didn't have plenty, we ended up having plenty because kids knew we needed to eat a little bit less than what we normally would. And we would always take care of that. But in verse 16 it says, she considereth a field and buyeth it, and with the fruit of her hand she planteth a vineyard. And that's amazing that she would consider the field. You know what that meant, considered? That just didn't mean she looked at it and drove by and saw it. That means that she went out. She saw it. She looked in the soil, what was growing, what the possibilities were for that. And then after she did all that, she bought it and then planted a vineyard with her hands. She knew what she wanted to do, and she knew what she wanted to accomplish, and that's what she did. And sometimes we'll think of this as like, huge fields or anything. It could have been a small plot of land for a vineyard. You don't need a ton of land for a vineyard. Sometimes you do. Bible doesn't say that, but that's what she was doing. And did her husband count on that? Sure. Did it take a lot of pressure off of him by her doing that? Yeah. Just something he didn't have to worry about. And he had a wife that would just, hey, I'm going to not only buy the field, but I'm going to plant the vineyard too. In verse 17, she girdeth her loins with strength and strengtheneth her arms. That's, once again, pretty self-explanatory too. While she's working, she's strong. What happens when you lose your strength? I had shoulder surgery and lost a lot of my strength. Man, there's things you can't do. And then as you start getting back into using your arms and stuff again, your strength builds up pretty quick. But not as quick as years ago, but pretty quick. And if you're strengthening your arms, what can your arms help you do? I took it for granted a lot, the things that I couldn't do without a shoulder. But now that I'm getting all my strength back and I'm able to do a lot of those things again, that's important. You're pulling, you're carrying, you're lifting, you're everything. Everything with your arms. Verse 18, she perceiveth that her merchandise is good. Her candle goeth out by night. What's that? Her candle goeth not out by night. Yep, thank you. Didn't want to leave that word out, and I didn't do it intentionally. That was accidental. But her candle goeth not out by night. Just means she's going to be diligent in everything that she does. She's not going to worry that, it's past 6 o'clock, then my day is done. Her merchandise is good. When she does something, it has a quality to it. It has something that's up here. When we have dinner on the grounds, a lot of us sneak around and look at what somebody brought because we know it's good. Not that other things aren't good, but, where's that dish at? And, when it's good, what happens when the merchandise is good? People are going to want it. It's going to talk a little bit in a few minutes here about some things that she made and the quality of them. Verse 19, she layeth her hands to the spindle, and her hands hold the distaff. We've seen the people spinning the thread, and that if you go down to Williamsburg or even to the Amish country, and you see those folks doing that, that's tedious. 2 hands constantly moving to get that thread on the wheels and the looms and just different things like that. That's very, very tedious work. but important. In verse 20, she stretcheth out her hand to the poor, yea, she reacheth forth her hands to the needy. Always thinking about other people. Always thinking about those folks that need something. And she was able to take care of that. And guess what? It was in her power, and she was able to do it, and she took care of it. In verse 21, she's not afraid of the snow for her household, for all her household are clothed with scarlet. And we're talking about things that will keep you warm. Whoever invented Under Armour should have read this verse, about 100 years ago, because that's kind of the material that we're talking about. That's scarlet because it's just, nice and comfortable. And then also, is scarlet dark? So if it's snowing and you want that dark clothing and you're outside, what happens to that dark clothing? The sun hits it and it keeps you warm. That's why you don't wear white in the wintertime, because you're not going to get warm with it, especially if you're outside. She maketh herself coverings of tapestry. Her clothing is silk and purple. The tapestry are the things that are in her household. Things that are, covering the windows, covering the beds, covering different things. Those are the tapestries. And her clothing is silk and purple. Once again, it's the position of the king requires a silk and purple color that is for him. In verse 23, her husband is known in the gates when he sitteth among the elders of the land. What reputation can a virtuous woman give to her husband? It's the same as a non-virtuous woman would give to her husband. You're going to be known. You're going to be known one way or another. Wouldn't it be better to have a virtuous woman for you to be known by? So when he sitteth in the gates and talking among the elders, your wife is Brenda. She does this and this and this and this and this. And you go through that, and you get that good report back. Your wife is the nicest, kindest person I've ever met in my life. Your wife is the most hardworking lady I've ever seen in my life. All down the list. All those things that us husbands hear, and when we hear them, that makes us proud of our wives, and we should be. Because when you hear those things, those are things that you can take back to your wife and tell them, and they need to know that, because it's important. Because a lot of times, they don't know. They're just doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're just doing what they would come naturally. But when the Bible talks about it, and you're in your group and you're talking about it with other men, and then they say things like that's awesome. You can't put a price on that. In verse 24, she maketh fine linen and selleth it, and delivereth girdles unto the merchant. Not the girdles that we think about, in today's terms, but she's making things that could be very, very decorative for folks. They could be inlaid with gold thread, silver thread, little decorations and things from what I was reading, and then she'll sell them to folks to make money for the household. And it doesn't say that she's running back and telling her husband all this stuff that she's doing. She's just doing it. She openeth her mouth with wisdom, and in her tongue is the law of kindness. Her mom's always kind, 100%, never get upset. Sometimes. I can remember mom getting upset sometimes, and, just when she would say stuff, it would resonate. And you would just keep it in the back of your mind and things like that. But most of the time it was things with wisdom. Wisdom out of the Bible, wisdom that came from age, wisdom that just knowing what to say and when to say it. Very, very important. She looketh well to the ways of her household, and eateth not the bread of idleness. If you're looking at somebody that's just a couch potato, is all the rest of these things going to happen? No. You can't be idle. There's always something going on. Her children arise up and call her blessed, and her husband also, and he praiseth her. It goes back to when we were talking about just, talking about your wife when you're sitting with the elders as husbands, and then also the children rising up and call her blessed. The moms that are here, what happens when your child just gives you a compliment or thanks you for things that you've done even years ago, or comes up and gives you a big hug and tells them that, hey, I love you? What happens from a mom's standpoint? I can tell you that my mom, even, in her 70s, and Dana, watching her, when the kids, if they come up and they just give her a hug, you couldn't give her, $1 million, and she would rather take the hug and the kiss and I love you. Very, very important. Sometimes I'll tell my boys that. I'll say, you just don't know how much that means to your mom. And guess what? And hopefully they just continue, because I see them now. I don't have to remind them that when they, do get the opportunity with Dana, as we did yesterday, they did. And with Dana's mom. And, that's what she said. I called her this morning and told her Happy Mother's Day. And she said, yesterday just meant so much to me, just seeing the boys and Dana, but it's the boys and Dana. And, and we knew it. And that's why we decided yesterday to just, go to breakfast and then go to dinner last night and just make it a whole day. And she really enjoyed it. But that's why when, you have a virtuous woman, the kids and the husband always going to be praising them. Many daughters have done virtuously, but thou excellest them all. Verse 30 and 31, favor is deceitful and beauty is vain, but a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised. Has to go back to fearing the Lord and doing the things that are right and keeping God the center point in the life and in the family. Give her of the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. When you have a virtuous woman, a woman that's going to fear God and follow God in everything, every decision that's made and everything along the family and business and everything, we can't go wrong. We need more virtuous mothers in the country. We need more virtuous mothers everywhere that we go, because we wouldn't have the problems that we have right now if we had all virtuous mothers, as talked about here in Proverbs 31. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this morning. Lord, I just thank you for these guidelines on what a virtuous woman should be, and Lord, just the godly mothers that we have today that are here in Turnpike Baptist Church. And Lord, I pray that you would just be with Pastor as he gives a message today, that if there's one person that needs to be saved, that today would be the day. And I just thank you and praise you for everything you're going to do today. In Jesus' name, amen.